Can you see this file which says ethnography of communication? And there is a picture of a handsome young man.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. So the person that you see in the picture is considered to be the father of ethnography of communication. His name is Dale Himes. Okay, he was an American anthropologist. So, ethnography of communication, originally called the ethnography of speaking, is the analysis of communication within the context of the social and cultural practices and beliefs of the members of a particular culture or speech community. This is the basic definition of what ethnography of communication is. Now, let me elaborate upon this. See, whenever we look at the idea of language or the idea of communication, we think, and most of the theorists have worked that way, that language is something um, as an add on, something extra in our social practices. That in order to do the social practices well, we use language as a tool. This is what we normally believe, and most of the theorists worked with that hypothesis. But Delheim says that no, language is not just a tool or a medium to do the social activity, but language itself is a social activity. So, how you use the language and how you communicate with others, okay, that will also add into your social roles and social activities. So Delheims is giving a kind of hierarchy, a nested hierarchy where the biggest concepts comes first, then the smaller concept within that, there is another smaller concept, there is another smaller concept. This is uh, the way he started the analysis of the communities that use language. So the biggest concept that he proposed was speech community. It is written here. Okay. That we use language in a particular speech community. Okay. And we have to observe the rules and regulations of that particular speech community to use the language effectively. So there are rules of language, that is the rules of grammar. There are rules of communication, how and what can be communicated in a given time, on a given occasion, with a given person. So these are considered the rules of communication. Plus, there will be rules of society, rules of the community, that only certain things you can talk about. You cannot just talk about anything anywhere. Okay. So there are certain topics which are considered taboo, or there are certain topics which are considered very formal, or there are certain topics which are considered very informal, and that's why you cannot talk about those things everywhere. Okay. You will have to identify the right situation and right type of people to talk about it. Okay. So that's the idea of uh, Delheims. So he first of all proposes the idea of speech community. Before we move forward, I'll go through two other definitions and some explanation about it. The approach to the study of language. Ultimately, when you are talking about ethnography of communication, you are basically talking about the study of language. So, the approach to the study of language, in which the use of language in general is related to social and cultural values, that in which society and in which culture you are using the language. That is primary. So this approach is called ethnography of speaking or communication. Now, Delheims did not talk about ethnography of communication in a vacuum. He was basically against the approach to the language that considers that language is somewhere in your mind and you just have to learn the rules of that language and you will be able to communicate effectively. Okay. This idea was presented by Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is a very important linguist, philosopher, mathematician, and political commentator. So he presented this idea somewhere in 1957, where he said that we have a universal grammar in our mind. That is, we as human take birth equipped with the system of grammar in our mind. So if we are exposed to a certain language, we will automatically pick up the grammar of that language and we start speaking. And there he makes the difference between competence and performance. So what Chomsky says that our knowledge of the rules, being an ideal speaker or a hearer, we have certain rules in our mind to use the language. So our knowledge of that rule is the competence, it is ideal. Well, how we actually use the language is the performance. Okay. So for example, if you want to drive, you will have to learn the rules of driving and you will have to learn the rules of traffic. So if you mug up the entire dictionary or the, let's say, how to drive book, all the rules are given there. Will you be able to drive a car? If you mug up all the rules of driving, you take a book, you buy a book, and you read everything, you learn all those rules that are written for driving purposes. Will you be able to drive?
No, sir.
No. Why?
So we have to do that thing practically.
Yeah, we have to practice it. Okay. So this is the distinction Chomsky is making, that you have the rules of the language in your mind, but you have to practice it, you have to perform it. Okay. But in his theory, Chomsky talked about ideal situation, ideal speaker, ideal hearer, and a performer. Chomsky did not mention anything about society, anything about culture, and this is where Delheims had a problem. He said that no linguistic knowledge, that the knowledge of the language, or performance is possible without having some basic understanding of the society, culture, and situation in which you are using it. And he's saying this on the basis of his experience of field work. He was working with the American tribal languages then. Okay. So he developed his own theory, which we now know as ethnography of communication. He recently died 10 years back in 2009. So Delheims defines this as the ethnography of speaking is concerned with the situations and uses, the patterns and functions of speaking as an activity in its own right. That when you speak, you consider the situations in which you speak. You won't be speaking the same thing that you speak in a marriage. You won't repeat the same thing in a funeral. We know what to speak when, right? So, in which situation and with whom, what kind of language we have to use. That is one. What are the patterns of using the language? That is the grammatical patterns. Okay, like there are certain languages where they do not have the future tense. Okay. So if you want to talk about future, what will you do? So then you will have to learn the pattern. There are certain languages where they do not have the word for left or right. So if you want to talk about the direction, he was left to me or he was right to me, okay, you will have to learn the pattern. What is the correct pattern there? And by using the language, you are asserting yourself as a social individual. It makes you a social being. And so that was the idea of Delheims. So Delheims gives the concepts like speech community, speech situation, speech event, and speech act. So these are the four nested hierarchies. And then in the end, combining all of them, he talks about communicative competence. That is a person's ability to use the language appropriately and effectively in the given situation, in the given community. So his first concept, speech community. Okay. Now, based on this name itself, you will know that it is something to do with speaking and a group of people. Speech community, a community of the people who communicate with each other very frequently. So, Delheims gives a very interesting definition. He says a group to which a particular ethnographic description applies. Now, if I ask you ethnography, have you heard this word before today's class?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Okay. Have you heard the word like
No, sir.
ethnic or ethnicity? Have you heard this word?
Yes.
Where did you hear
Yes.
it? Ethnic or ethnicity? Under which context you have heard this word? Yes, anyone? Have you heard ethnic? Come on, I'm waiting for your answer.
Tradition,
Tradition.
tradition like
Yeah.
ethnic wear and
Yeah, traditional wear is normally presented as ethnic wear. Okay. So tradition of some particular group of people. Tradition does not come automatically. Tradition comes when it is practiced by a group of people. Then it becomes the tradition. So ethnic is directly related with a group of people who share the same identity. Okay. Like we also talk about ethnic cleansing, which is a very negative word, but it is very famous in the modern day society across the world. Okay. So a particular group of people are targeted and being killed, okay, for their being part of a particular group, particular religion, particular caste, particular race. Okay. So what Hitler tried to do during World War II was an attempt of ethnic cleansing, and there are many other examples. So ethnic word refers to a group of people who share the same identity. Either they belong to a particular nation, one identity of nationality, or they belong to a particular race, another identity, for example, Aryan or Dravidian or Austronesian. So that can also be an identity. A group of people who belong to a certain color, like black people, fine. And on the basis of that, you have racism. Then you have the ethnic identity based on the religion, group of people who belong to a certain religion. You can have ethnic identity on the basis of your caste. Okay. Someone is Dalit or someone is Kshatriya or someone is Brahmin. So that is also an ethnic identity. Now, when we are using ethnography, so ethno refers to that ethnic, graphy refers to writing. That is, you're trying to write about their unique identity by doing ethnographic research. So here in speech community, we will have to identify some five characteristics which are proposed by Delheims, and there is sixth one which is proposed by a student of Delheims called Savile Troike. So the first characteristic of a speech community is one variety of communication. See, we are not using the word one language for communication. We are using one variety, not language. And there is a big difference here. For example, uh, we all can speak English language. Do we all speak English?
Yes, sir.
Yes, very good. Now, all the Americans also use English language. All the British also use English language. All the, let's say, New Zealand people, majority of them use English language. Okay. The indigenous language of New Zealand is Maori, not English. All the Australians use English language. So can we call ourselves British or American? Because we also know English. Americans also speak English. British also speak English. We're using same variety, same language for communication, right?
No,
No? Then aren't
because the
we?
way of living is different. There, uh, you can say, means everything is different. We can't be Americans or Britishers just by adopting their language. We need to
Mhm.
adopt a lot many things along with English. Then only we can be American or Britishers.
Yes. So even when we talk about English, apart from the way of living and geography and all those things, even when we talk about only English language, our English language is different from American English or British English. So we are not using the standardized English. Even the Americans and British use different English. So this is where we talk about variety. Our variety of English is different from their variety of English. Let's say we all use Gujarati language. Okay. How many of you cannot use Gujarati? Thank you for the design, Falguni.
Sorry, sir, it just happened.
I like colors. Yeah, Manashvi cannot use Gujarati or can use Gujarati.
Yes, sir.
You
I
cannot use.
cannot use Gujarati.
Well, okay. So where are you born and brought up?
I'm born and brought up in Vadodara only, but I'm Maharashtrian.
Okay, so you don't understand Gujarati at all?
No, I understand Gujarati, but I am not able to speak
Okay,
fluently.
fine. So now the Gujarati we speak in Vadodara is different from the Gujarati we speak in Surat or in Bhavnagar or in Mehsana or in Rajkot. Though we are all using Gujarati language. The
Yes.
uh, yeah.
Yes, the way of speaking is different. The way of expressing emotion is different.
Hmm.
The way of speaking a Gujarati. If here people do in Baroda, people do say that kem cho, but in Surat they will say means they will use ta at the end of the sentence. In Bhavnagar they will use Kathiawadi tone, that is hello kem છો તમે એ રીતના. And in Rajkot also, Bhavnagar and Rajkot's Gujarati is little bit same, but the tone is same actually, but the wordings and expressing the emotion is different.
Yes.
Same in the Ahmedabad, Surat, Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, they have Gujarati, different kind of Gujarati in which they
Mhm.
will use sa, and there are in Kutch they will use her.
Hmm.
In Mehsana they will use her
Hmm.
at the end of the language, and there are a lot from it is said that the tone and the variety of Gujarati changes every 50 kilometers or kind of some number of kilometers. Our language of Gujarati changes.
Hmm. So
There is a variety.
basically, the difference that we are talking about is the difference of accent. how you speak it. Like Vadodari Gujarati is considerably very close to standardized Gujarati. But in Rajkot, they use Kathiawadi Gujarati. In Bhavnagar, they use Jhalawadi Gujarati. Mehsana, they use lot of ch. In Surat, they use lot of ta. Okay. So there is difference of pronunciation, the expression, your intonation is different, plus your vocabulary will be different. Okay. So this is what we call the varieties. So when you're talking about a Gujarati person as opposed to a Hindi person, then we are all Gujarati. But within Gujarat, then there is Jhalawar, there is Kathiawar, there is Hurat. They say Hurat, not Surat. So very simple question like Camcho. If I ask you Camcho in Vadodara, the basic city area, जिसे हम बोलते चार दरवाजा area, they will say शांति छे. In Ahmedabad, they will say મજામાં. In Rajkot, they say હાલ્યે રાખે. In Surat, they say જલસા છે. Because their understanding of the world, their perspective on the world is different. Living in different socio-political, cultural conditions, and that's why their uses of language will also differ. And that's why Delheim says that one variety, one accent for communication. All the members of one speech community, they are all using one variety of language. Okay. So if it is Vadodari Gujarati, it will be Vadodari Gujarati. If it is Kathiawadi, it will be Kathiawadi. Everybody is using that only. And that's why we can identify that this is Kathiawad. This particular area, geographical area, is called Kathiawad. This particular geographical area is called Jhalawad. So we identify on the basis of their customs and traditions. They are same. And the second characteristic that Delheims talk about is same rules of interaction. That when you talk, you follow the same rules of communication. As I gave you the example of Camcho. Similarly, in English, for example, we say, how do you do? How will you answer? I ask us very simple question. How do you do? What could be your answer there? I'll tell you one interesting story about British people. In Britain, for example, you are in a room and there is one more person in the room. You are probably sitting there face to face for 4 hours, but you will not talk. But the third person enters who knows both of you, and he or she will come and introduce you to each other. Then you will talk. That is, in order to talk with someone, you will require a formal introduction in the British English community. Without that formal introduction by the third party, you will not talk. This is considered formal. This is considered normal for them. Now, under this situation, if someone is asking you, how do you do? What would have been your reply? You know each other. You talk to each other. How will you answer that person? You don't
So
answer?
first we'll say,
Yeah.
I'm fine. Then we'll uh, ask same question to the person who is asking us.
Okay, we will ask the same question. How do you do? But first you will reply, I'm fine. Okay. Any other
Yes.
option? Any other way we can give the reply to this person? According to the British rule of interaction, if someone greets you with how do you do, then you must reply how do you do. any other reply that you give, which means you are insulting the other person. There is nothing inherent in this question that lets you know that you must reply this way. And second important thing, that if the person doesn't want to know how are we, then why are he or she, why is that person asking the question, right? सो अगर आपको कोई मिलता है यहाँ पर बड़ौदा में, गुजरात में, आपके आजू बाजू वाले लोग, और वो पूछते कैम छो या कैसे हो, what will be your reply? That's fine. Okay, anything else? बस मजामा. There's a very famous film made by Rahul Bose. I hope you know him. He's a very famous actor. The film's title was Everybody Says I'm Fine. It was a very interesting film, very old film, around 20 years old film, worth a watch. So whenever we are asked this question, how are you, Kemcho, Kaise ho, we will simply answer Majama, Saru che. We will never tell the truth. हम किसी को हॉस्पिटल में मिलने के लिए जाते हैं, वो वहाँ एडमिटेड है, उसके लिए हम फ्रूट्स वगैरह लेकर जाएंगे, और वहाँ जाएंगे, उसकी बेड के पास बैठेंगे और बोलेंगे कैसे हो, हमको दिख रहा है ऑक्सीजन चल रहा है, बॉटल चल रहा है, इतनी सारी दवाई पड़ी है, फिर भी वो बोलेगा ठीक है. पीपल डोंट गिव द करेक्ट आंसर्स. क्यों नहीं देते हैं? People don't give correct answers because we do not want correct answers in this kind of communication. और उसके लिए मैं आपको एक बहुत अच्छा एक्सपेरिमेंट बताता हूँ कि अगर कोई आपको कैम छो या कैसे हो पूछे, तो उसको आप 5 मिनट तक लेक्चर दो. 5 मिनट तक बताओ कि तुम्हारी लाइफ में क्या क्या गलत हो रहा है और क्या क्या सही हो रहा है. सच में कैसे हो बता दो उसको. वो इंसान आपको 2 बार ये सवाल पूछेगा. 2 बार अगर आपने ऐसा जवाब दिया, तो तीसरी बार वो इंसान ऐसी हिम्मत नहीं करेगा कि आपको हाउ आर यू पूछे. सो दिस इज वेयर व्हाट वी से द rules of interaction, interpretation within a specific speech community is important. This is important for us. In our community, we do this. In Arabic communities, they don't simply say how are you and how do you do. They have a very long list of greetings. Okay, and they keep on talking for almost like 3 to 4 minutes, and it is just greeting, nothing else. Okay, they ask about everything. Okay, वो आप कैसे हो, आपके बच्चे कैसे हैं, आपकी फैमिली कैसी है, आपकी ज़मीन कैसी है, आपकी जायदाद कैसी है, सब कुछ पूछ लेंगे वो लोग. And they'll reply to each other, and that's very normal for them. So this is where the rules of interaction interferes. That in one community they have one rule, in another community they have another rule. And if you are part of one community, you should know the rules how to communicate in that community. What are the rules of interaction? The third point is frequency of interaction. Though we don't meet very frequently, but we do communicate in one or the other way. I will tell someone, that someone will tell someone, that someone will tell someone, and it will come to you. So anyway, indirectly, the interaction is going on, and you are aware what is happening in the speech community. So the members of one speech community, they interact very frequently. Then same as feeling. That is, being a person, you feel for your community. I feel that I am Gujarati, or I feel that I am Barodian. That's my identity. for my group of people. But at the same time, the Barodian community should also feel that this person is Barodian, or the Gujarati community should also feel that this person is Gujarati. So that's a mutual identification. I feel for my community feels for me. So this is what we call same us feeling. Okay. We feel that we are all same and we belong to the same group of people. And that's why the fifth characteristic, we have a common goal. We want to achieve upliftment of all the community members. We want betterment of everyone. So all the community members, either collectively or individually, strive for the betterment of the entire community that they feel for. These are the five characteristics given by Delheims. The sixth one, overlapping speech communities, proposed by Savile Troike, who was a student of Delheims, said that we are simultaneously part of more than one speech community. Say, for example, right now, I am an employee of Navrachna University. I feel for my university. But at the same time, I am also Gujarati. I feel for the Gujarati speech community. At the same time, I am a linguist and I also feel for the community of the linguist. At the same time, I belong to a certain class, certain caste, certain religion, certain community, and at the same time, I feel for all of them. So, an individual can be part of many speech communities at the same time. And there is a possibility that uh, a member in this community may be a member of, in another community, and we are together there also. So, that is what Savile Troike calls overlapping speech communities.